Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST, and as always we're not in a pub. Today I'm joined by Paul Somerville and we're in his office in Newcastle and we're representing the Geordie Massive, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah, unlike Question Time last night where this happened.
Do you not think the government should, instead of asking for an election, should they not get in touch with other countries who are not in the common market and start doing deals with them? And put the pressure on the EU.
Okay. The woman there in the red top.
I want to know why, after 3 years, we voted to leave. We are not stupid people. We know what we want. But the Remains, the Leaves, every MP has got a different story or a different answer to what suits their benefits, not what the public want.
So you feel you're not being listened to?
We're definitely not being listened to. I mean, 3 years, you're saying you want longer than 3 days to read this paper. You've had 3 years to sort out what we want and what was asked of us. Yes, we want to leave.
In my opinion, if we had an election before Christmas, that would be the best Christmas present for me, because if Boris is smart and if he's sensible, he'll make a pact with the Brexit party and we'll walk that election and we'll annihilate the opposition.
For the good of the UK, would it not be better that Brexit was resolved before there was a general election, so it was fought on the real issues?
I have the ballot paper here that we all voted for in the referendum, which is a vote to, do you want to remain a member of the EU or do you want to leave the EU? We voted to leave the EU, so therefore we should carry out the wishes of the people. It was a 63% majority in constituencies. In this region, South Shields, it was 60% to leave. So the politicians, it is incumbent on them to carry out the wishes of the people. And I think that should be carried out immediately.
Well, it's absolutely completely disrespectful of all the politicians, because they go and say that, oh, Boris Johnson has come into power and he's been voted in by a tiny majority of the country. Well, allow him to have an election. People voted for Brexit, so I assume that he will walk it if he's prepared to have a pact with the Brexit party. And it's completely disrespectful to say to people who voted leave that they were uneducated, because it's not necessarily the fact. People should respect the democratic rights.
We live in a democratic society, well, we are supposed to. Then we have people like you, Caroline, who actually accept or want a people's vote. We've already voted on that, and that was to leave the EU. You said the other day that you didn't want Brexit to happen because you didn't want to lose your job. We have thousands and thousands of people who are actually wanting to leave the EU. Therefore, are you so incompetent that you can't see that that is what we call democracy in our country?
Is there anyone in the audience who supports Caroline's view for a referendum?
So I watched that programme last night. I haven't tuned into Question Time for quite some time, but because it was in my area, South Shields, I thought, oh, I'll watch it, you know. And I thought that has to be a complete stitch up. How is that possible? When I was campaigning with Our Future, Our Choice, I know that some of the most passionate people that I have involved are from the South Shields area. Louise Brown, who is one of the main people in North East for EU, there's even a shop in South Shields that is all pro-EU and pro-Remain. She said that 30 of her the people involved and activists in the programme applied to be on the show and they were all rejected. Now, this just sort of adds to the belief of the BBC and the insane bias. And I sat watching the programme and I thought, no wonder people in this country have been completely brainwashed with all these empty slogans and get Brexit done and Brexit means Brexit and these hollow words, when this is what they're subjected to on almost a 24 hours news cycle. Like the fact that, I mean, look at the people's, the recent march.
Yeah, 1 million people.
1 million people. And I think I saw, the only clips I've seen have been ones that have been took out and shared on social media. Now, if you if you take into account a vast amount of people on these marches and the ones that have attended over the past, 2 years, some of the biggest marches in British history, but yet we see very little of the actual people talking and their opinions, but yet we're subjected to a full hour of this, in my opinion, I don't want to say nonsense, because I do feel sorry for a lot of these people in the respect of they're angry and they've got a right to be angry at many issues in the country, but it's misdirected and a lot of them have been misinformed.
Yeah.
And that's not, don't call us stupid. It's nothing like that. But when you are told, the amount of people that believe that that we have to change to the euro in 2020
And join the EU army.
Yeah, but because of that meme that went about, misinformation, put out there with bad intentions and then not fact checked has led to the situation we're in now.
This week as well, Stephen Barclay, who is he's the Secretary of State for exiting the Department for exiting the EU, and he went on Twitter and made this statement that Britain was prevented from banning live animal exports because of the EU, which was just an out and out lie. And it's disgraceful that he's saying that when Brexit is putting us in a situation where animal welfare and our food standards is about to just take an absolute nosedive. I spoke to a farmer in Wales a couple of months ago, and he was saying what will happen is all the sheep that you see on the fields at the moment, grass-fed sheep, we won't be able to sell them outside the UK because there's massive WTO tariffs that will be slapped on them. Maybe the Middle East, because the Middle East they don't have any need for protection for lamb because they don't have sheep in the Middle East because it's mostly desert. But then also the standards for the animals that are kept here will, in the words of the farmer, he said it will go underground. So you don't see too many pigs, you don't see too many chickens out and about in this country because they're all in sheds. And that's what will happen. All these lambs will be reared 9 months in a shed.
In like a black market sort of illegal operation.
No, it's just
sheep and cannabis farms back to back.
It's just cramming as many sheep as possible as you can into a small area because you've got to make that profit.
Right, okay.
If your EU subsidies are going west as well.
I see what you mean.
And then if we're transporting these animals to the Middle East, we could butcher them here and then freeze the meat and take it over to the Middle East. But two major problems with that. One is that we don't have enough abattoirs and vets because a lot of British vets are quite unwilling to work at abattoirs because it's, come on, you sign up to be a vet. You don't want to watch animals getting slaughtered every day. You do it because you like animals.
Yeah.
But a lot of the vets that we have in this country that work in abattoirs are actually from Spain and from other EU nations. And a lot of them are going home. So you've got that problem here. And plus, if we're selling to the Middle East, we've got the issue of halal, which means that the animal has to be sacrificed, has to be slaughtered in this ritualistic manner.
Yeah.
And a lot of the market in places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they can pay top dollar to have the sheep brought over alive, and then
Emirates.
Yeah, and then slaughtered according to their religious practices. The big problem with that is, so instead of to get across Europe takes about a day in a train or a truck or whatever. Does
it?
Yeah,
a day.
I drove from Bran Castle in Transylvania all the way back to Liverpool in about 18 hours. Well, me and another driver, because obviously we have to take shifts.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Wow. Okay.
It's was it 18 hours? I'm gonna have to fact check that. I'm gonna have to look up on Google how long it takes, because otherwise I might.
Yeah, you just can't get slaughtered in the comment section.
Yeah, comment section. You can't drive that fast, Graham. You must have been breaking the law. Quick, reporting to the police. But yeah, so huge issues with this sort of 30-second video that Stephen Barclay put on Twitter. He just comes out with this lie, and I've just spent 5 minutes on this video debunking it.
Yeah.
And we're just putting out fires all the time.
Yeah.
And with the BBC last night, I really think I'm going mad. I'm starting to get this conspiracy mindset that this is all a setup. This is all done on purpose.
Well, I mean, that there was an American woman on, which to me straight away just smacks of like the shark circling at this point, and whenever the word now is think tanks mentioned,
think tanks, what are they?
Well, especially when it's like that sort of Patrick Minford, Brexit, economists for Brexit type department, you know?
Yeah.
And the things she was coming out with were just ridiculous, and if put under any scrutiny would have just fallen apart. But of course there was no one, and I think they had one Lib Dem MP in the middle of a pack of lions, like a Brexiteer panel that just got ripped to shreds. I mean, she tried to stand her ground, but she was well behind enemy lines, and she was trying to reply with things that made sense and things that were factually true, but she was just shouted down at every opportunity with this woman who was saying, we can trade with the rest of the world. We already do.
The rest of the world lie.
And obviously you've got the complete common sense things of the rule of gravity, you know, when it makes much more sense to that you can trade with your neighbours just because of costs and transport and various other factors. And you're great, we can sell refrigerators to, you know, Venezuela or whatever, fantastic. But 45% of our trade goes to the EU, you know, and this forced perspective, the false perspective or the false comparison of, oh, well, the EU needs us more than them. I think it works out at about 11% of the EU's trade is with the UK.
But that really does just presuppose a mindset that makes no sense when it comes to international trade.
Yeah.
We don't. It's not a case of needing each other. It's a case of wanting to trade and willing to trade.
Exactly.
We've got stuff they want. They've got stuff we want, and we can't deny that.
100%.
87% of our fresh fruit and veg comes from the EU.
Yep.
I mean, okay, we might sell them cars, but they're not going to get scurvy if we don't supply enough cars to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I love these, you know, pre-referendum and the I know what I voted for team, like that would hit me with these really stealthy, sophisticated arguments about trade deficits and being able, you know, freedom of negotiation after the EU. And now I talk with the same people that obviously when the sort of prominent Brexiteers have now came out and said there is no financial or economic argument for Brexit anymore, and we need to sort of cut with losses, come back with a plan maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm arguing with these same people on Facebook that are going, and I quote, I would rather eat cornflakes for years than live in the EU, or I would rather me and my family lived in a caravan. For what?
There was a guy in Parliament Square who said he would rather eat grass.
Yeah, I'll eat grass. Put that on a bus. Like,
by the way, it was 30 hours. Drive.
30 hours.
Yeah, I just checked it on Google.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry, 30 hours. It took me 30 hours.
But this is when we hold podcast hosts to more accountability than prime ministers and economists. And
they just keep lying. No one's calling them out.
I heard a phrase that summed it up yesterday. Boris Johnson doesn't even pretend to be telling the truth anymore.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to.
He says things with a bit of a smug smile, and it's like, you know, the guy's lying, and people... But James O'Brien, he's a liar, but he's my liar. Yeah. That's what he said, and that's what we've come to. Well, I know he's lying, but he's going to do what I want, which is whatever he tells us. Which is whatever he tells us it is.
Wow, how did we sink this far? Do you think this is the morality of this country is just inexcusable?
I gave up the politics thing for a good little while. I've had a break. My blood pressure is through the roof right now because it gets us so agitated.
But I think this is a huge failure of morality. I think this country doesn't know the difference between right and wrong anymore. They don't seem to care that these people who I guess are role models in some way are lying, are cheating, are breaking the law, are, suspending Parliament, are lying to the Queen. What kind of example is that to show the nation's children to say, oh, well, you know, we can ignore this law, we don't like it?
100%. There's been a gigantic shift, and I think it's been... The build-up has been slow, but the trigger has released very quickly over the past 3 years. So, and this sums it up for me, the 39 bodies that were found in the back of a truck.
I was about to mention that.
Horrific, terrible. I now understand how 1930s Germany was slowly the idea of humanity being, you know, people being dehumanized and becoming insects and the value of life becoming almost nil when I see people on Facebook who are family people from the northeast and various locations over the UK, and when that news broke, the comments on the Facebook articles, well, good, it'll save the government a few pound. Oh, well, they're all illegals, they shouldn't be coming here anyway.
Leave.eu's Facebook page was covered in comments like this. disgusting comments about 39 less mouths to
Yeah,
feed.
yeah.
And
Like,
you're
what is wrong with people?
Well, this is it. The politicians and the media have gone out of their way to push an agenda that means that you have to suspend your sense of morality. You have to suspend your ideas of right and wrong that I feel are innate, but obviously they're not innate to a lot of the population because they're willing to just walk away from them. And I always assume that everyone's like the hero in their own narrative, in their own life, but I can't see how you could write a comment like that about 39 people huddled together, freezing to death in a dark reefer container, and think, good, that's a good thing that happened. I'm going to write on the internet that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You can't be the hero in that story ever.
Yeah.
You've got to just look at yourself and say, I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible person.
Yeah.
Please don't breed.
It's and I think obviously it didn't matter what nationality they were from because they were from across the channel instantly.
Yeah. Katie Hopkins calling refugees cockroaches. Same language they used in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Yeah. The exact same word.
Well, and obviously they used to call Jewish people like rodents and stuff in comic books and cartoons of shadows of rats turning into Jews and all this sort of stuff.
I really worry about the morality of the nation and the direction that we're heading if we continue on this road. And it's not helping when we have the BBC, whose remit is to educate and inform, deciding that it's not, it's to entertain and inform. Just saying, well, let's turn politics into a circus, let's make it all a thing for entertainment, and they're not interested in live fact-checking, which they could do.
I think they've realised that maybe when they have a pro-Remain panel or audience, that Remainers aren't necessarily the type of demographic to be watching Question Time on a Thursday evening. Obviously with it being a much younger demographic, maybe that's just not bringing in the viewers, So I think
matter to the BBC, they shouldn't care about viewers.
True, yeah, I suppose, because they don't get paid for advertising, do they?
They're supposed to be a state broadcaster. They're not supposed to be a government broadcaster. Telling people that whatever the propaganda that's coming out from our government, our minority government.
But and that's what baffles is the people that. I mean that video, what a day that was, by the way. I 100% believe in your response. And that guy, did you see that guy in the news? Oh my God! So they interviewed this guy, and it was like every Brexit argument I've ever had. Yeah, I 100% believe in your response, and is what he said, right? And he went, I just get it done. Just leave means leave. And it was just like the playbook of slogans. And sorry, I've carry on. I forgot what I was going.
I get that because most people in this country don't care about Brexit. They've got their lives to get on with.
Totally.
And it's only the sort of the very hard Remainers like ourselves who are a little bit obsessed with it. Yeah. And these hard Brexiteers who are also equally as obsessed with hating the EU. But what worries me more than anything is where are these people going to turn if we do leave the EU to blame everything when things get inevitably shit because we put barriers up to our trading partners.
It'll be Remainers, obviously. So obviously, when we said all along, this is going to be terrible. This whole thing about there was lies on both sides. Well, no, there was predictions. We said this is going to be bad, and various people said on what level they believe it would be bad. On the Leave side, there was just hands down. Like complete lies about Turkey joining the EU and being able to do a deal in a day and all this sort of stuff, holding all the cards. Yeah, exactly. Like Nissan and that, not being bothering manufacturing, blah blah blah. Yeah. But I think what I was going to say is my point is before all these people that are now gathering behind Boris Johnson, I 100% believe in Boris Johnson. If you believe Boris Johnson is telling the truth, then his own impact assessments are telling you it's going to be terrible for the country. So you either believe him and his government, or you don't believe him. So which is it? You can't pick.
Because these are the impact assessments from the Brexiters in government. Yeah. And they're saying there's going to be a massive knock, especially in the northeast up here, we could see a 16% knock to our economy up here.
The week prior on Question Time, again, these little sound bites get taken out and then plopped into social media to feed the frenzy. The guy going, MPs are stabbing the working class man on the street in the back by stopping Brexit. And it's like, it's the complete opposite. These people are sacrificing careers and popularity, probably knowing that they'll be, deselected in the next election or the general election, to save, because these impact assessments state that the people that will be affected the most are white, people from the northeast, working class people from the northeast. Yeah. So if anything, they are protecting those people.
Yeah.
So it's insane to say anything other.
Well, what it reminds me of is World War One. Some posh, plummy-voiced bastard from some private school basically telling the Tommies to run towards the machine guns, blow the whistle, off they go, over the top. And they think that the poor guys being turned into mincemeat by these guns are thinking they're doing a great thing because they're doing what the posh person told them to do. You look at the cabinet and it's something like I think it's 50% of them have went to private school, when only 7% of the population went to private school. I mean, what kind of society are we building where we think that things can, everyone's got a fair, whack at it? We don't. No. We're heading towards a more unequal society, and unfortunately, a lot of deprived places that could really do with the support from the EU, like Liverpool got, are the ones kicking the ladder. They ain't kicking the ladder away; they're just kicking themselves.
Yeah. They're only halfway up the ladder themselves.
Yeah.
And again for the northeast.
But back to the BBC. What's weird is everyone I've ever met from the BBC are generally Remainers. They're generally people who are fairly intelligent, know what's going on in the world, and understand the implications of us leaving the European Union and trying to make trade deals with places like Djibouti and St. Lucia and
Have you been selling Djibouti recently?
Selling Djibouti, yeah. I like Djibouti.
I'll buy Djibouti.
Yeah.
How much do you want?
The idea that the idea that Brexit is a good idea has kind of just frittered away now. It's not even about that. It's not about the economy. It's not about people's happiness. It's just about
the fact that it happened.
We won. You lost. Get over it. And the weird thing is that the arguments that they make for us not having another referendum they're such hypocrites, because they're happy to have as many general elections as they like until they get the right result.
Yeah. Or, votes on the agreement or the withdrawal agreement. We can just continue for infinity to be voting on that constantly in House of Parliament. And this whole thing about the general election, I am over the moon to be honest that Brexiteers are now on board with overturning the democratic will of the people. Now that they want another general election for the third time in 3 years or something. Brilliant, fantastic. Put your money where your mouth is. Give us a people's vote, because I know exactly which side of the fence the country sits on now. Yeah. In fact, it's a statistical inevitability that it's now a Remain country just because of the age demographics.
But that's the thing. You say, you say more people want to remain, and they're like, how do you know? I say, well, I don't. Let's have a referendum.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
But instead, we're going to have a general election, because of the British first past the post system. You only need 40% of the vote, if that, to win a constituency. So there's 150 constituencies for Labour, 150 constituencies for the Conservatives that are definitely going to go that way, no matter what happens. And then it's just the rest that is there to play for.
It's not a general election. I mean, many people will agree and can already see this will solve nothing, because there's so many other factors come in with your opinion on a general election and your vote. You hate Jeremy Corbyn.
I do.
I certainly I used to be. I thought he's sort of socialist ideas, and I thought it would be great to have someone in power that generally cares about people and not, it doesn't work for wouldn't go to war at the whim of business, etc. I thought that'd be good, but he's let me down with Brexit and back in Remain, so I'm anti-Corbyn at the moment. So you would get my vote reluctantly, if that. Lib Dem, I feel like I don't know. I like them in principle, but I don't know whether they can win the.
They can't.
They can't win it.
They can't. If the Lib Dems do really, really, really well in the upcoming election, they'll get 100 seats.
Whereas I know for a fact Farage and
650.
Yeah, Farage and Boris Johnson would cut each other's throats to get this done, so they would, form a coalition straight away. That's how it'll go in my mind. Whereas, a 3-option or a 2-option referendum, I mean, you've seen the numbers. Look at the marches. Imagine what it was like outside of Parliament with 1 million people stood there as they were announcing and debating that. It must have felt like a siege.
Well, if all the levers were agreed about Boris Johnson's deal, then I'd be like, okay, maybe it is 50-50, but it's not. It is 50% of the country wants to stay in the EU, right? And then 50% want to leave, but 50% of them want to leave with no deal.
Yeah.
And the other 50% want to leave with Boris Johnson's deal. So you're talking about 25%.
Like it was
25%, 20. So whatever you do, you can't get an outcome to Brexit that is going to make everybody happy. You can either make a quarter of the country happy, a different quarter of the country happy, or literally half the country happy.
Exactly.
So just statistics alone say, yeah, we should remain, because then more people will be happy. Greatest happiness for the greatest number.
It was fantastic after, obviously, he started to get a deal has been agreed with the EU.
Yeah.
And then I saw all the Facebook comments going, why do we have a deal? I don't want a deal. That's not Brexit. And I'm like, oh my God. There are millions of different versions of Brexit out there now. Even if Brexit happens, Brexiteers won't be happy.
Yeah.
Because some of them want no deal at all. Not that they understand what no deal means. I'm yet to have a Brexiteer who wants no deal be able to explain it in any detail to us.
Well,
in any at all.
Question time, you just say it's just slogans.
Yeah.
It's just slogans now.
Very thin layers of knowledge, and once you just skim down to, well, do you understand what the WTO is?
But slogans work. This is the thing.
Well,
You're like,
Mein Kampf, keep it very simple and repeat it.
Yeah, just keep repeating it, even if it's a lie, and eventually people will believe it. But this is the thing of Boris Johnson. People know he lies, but they forgive him because he's funny and he makes them laugh. Trump, same. He's funny, so he makes people laugh, and so people forgive him in a way that they'll never forgive someone who's just dry and kind of a bit dull, like Joe Swinson or Keir Starmer or someone like that. And that's the thing. We're being run, and this isn't just the UK. This is all over the world. We're being run by men, typically,
who run the world.
The people who vote for them would want to go to the pub with. Now, I've got to be completely honest. Even as a Lib Dem, I wouldn't go to the pub. I wouldn't want to go to the pub with Joe Swinson. I wouldn't go, oh yeah, let's go to the pub with Joe. She'll be a good laugh. Whereas Boris Johnson, at least he'll make you laugh. You know, he'll probably not buy a drink and shag your wife, but apart from that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this whole sort of personality politics, I mean, it's great if a good leader's got a personality, but I'm not voting for anyone I'd just want to go for a drink with.
Well, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Then you end up with like Paul Gascoigne as Prime Minister or something, do you know what I mean? And that just sounds like a terrible idea.
Exactly, and that's why I don't want a presidency in this country, or at least not a political presidency, because I don't want someone who's popular becoming president.
Plenty of chicken and fishing rods though. Disaster situation said in Gaza at Iran. Oh my God! Please come and make that show.
No. But yeah, so if we had a sort of grown-up civilized debate about Brexit, and we had a grown-up civilized parliamentary system at the moment, we just don't seem to have that. We've seen people, the BBC and the people who won't leave, just want to be entertained. They just want to have a good time and have a laugh and get angry about something.
It's pantomime, isn't it?
Pantomime, yeah, I was going to say. Who's behind you? Boo the villain. Boo EU. Boo.
As well, this is what I was thinking. The more you sort of get in with the politics and you realise what's going on, it's essentially just a popularity contest. Yeah. I mean, Jesus Christ, surely there should be popular tests. There should be tests, do you know what I mean, on does this person understand the economy and vast, Oh, yeah. I really underestimated the importance of Dover. like you do Reservoir in Ireland, and you know, how is this news to these people?
3 jobs you don't need any qualifications for: being a parent, being a prostitute, and being a politician.
Yeah, so like, and I do harp on about this because it's, to me, probably the most troubling issue with Brexit, other than the racism and the xenophobia and all that, is the sort of we're sick of experts. We're sick of experts in Britain, but to me, being British in Britain, we are the experts. We invented the web. You know, we invented the railways. We invented, we cracked the Enigma code. You know, we are Stephen Hawkins. We are Newton. You know, to be
the Royal Society.
Yeah. To hate or to be sick of experts is to be sick of Britain, and that's what terrifies me. It's like one of these points in history where the monks come in and start burning the books. Yeah. You know, oh, don't read that, it's bad Mugombo. You know, you have to...
Come in.
No, it's the electrician, I think. Yeah, to be sick of experts is to be sick of what makes Britain great.
Yeah.
And that terrifies me. And it now boils down to the leader that, you know, we've got a guy, he was exposed on the Andrew Marr show. He did not have a clue about what was in the... It was either Article 50 or the withdrawal agreement, and he called him out, and basically he just knew one line.
Yeah.
He called him out on the line after, and he didn't know what he was talking about. Now, imagine that, sitting in an interview for a job, and you get it completely wrong, and you're exposed for being, not knowing what you're talking about.
Article 24 of the GATT agreement, which is about countries basically breaking apart, so Czechoslovakia becoming Czech Republic, or Czechia and Slovakia, to continue their trade as normal. But we're not doing that. We're pulling out of a trade bloc. It's very different. It doesn't apply to us at all. Yeah. And that's the point that Andrew O'Neill, is it?
I think it was Andrew Marr, was it?
No, it was Andrew Neil.
One of them.
Yeah. But yeah, pointing it out, going, you don't know this stuff. And he didn't. But also, I mean, the who was it? It was Eddie Mair, I think, who pinned Boris Johnson down on the fact that he actually gave the address of somebody
to be beaten up.
And Eddie Mair said to him, you're a nasty piece of work, and this guy is our prime minister. He is the person that all the nation's school children are looking at as our leader, because he is our leader, and going, it's okay to, you know, spend £100,000 on technology lessons with my mistress's my second mistress.
Technology lessons.
Yeah, it's okay to
spaff
£43 million up the wall on an invisible bridge. And here today they've dropped the Get Ready campaign, that they spent £100 million of taxpayers' money. That could have trained over 7,000 nurses, and they spent it on a campaign to say get ready for Brexit. This is a man who thinks nothing about just wasting money. Money doesn't mean anything to him. Why would it mean anything to him? He was born into immense wealth. He went to Eton. He's never had to look down the back of a couch to find 20 pence to put in the fucking electricity meter. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? He's never had to experience that. And to be in charge of a country where 99% of us are really struggling, you know, we're either just getting by, or by the looks of the amount of people who are homeless now, just not getting by at all. The number of people who are using food banks, it's gone through the absolute roof. And the figures came out this week suggesting that when the government say, we've only got about 3 million unemployed, it's absolute bullshit. That's the number of people who are claiming benefits. People who are out of work and not claiming benefits because they're on the street is something like 13 million. Not necessarily all 13 million are on the street, but I'm saying, you know, that they're the ones who've fallen through the cracks. And that would give us twice the unemployment rate of the average of the EU, and one of the highest unemployment rates in Europe.
Which is the one thing that Brexiteers tend to bring up most, the unemployment through Europe.
Yeah, because they made it really difficult to claim benefits. If you've seen the movie I, Daniel Blake, it's a good example of how real difficult it is, and the loops, the hoops that they make you jump through in order to get the benefits that you're supposed to have as being part of this society, as part of a society that looks after each other and looks after the poor and looks after the needy and looks after the infirm. But we're moving away from that.
Yeah.
And the BBC aren't helping. I want to bring it full circle back to the BBC, because I was just saying about how the people I've met who work for the BBC always seem quite sort of right on. And,
that's what I've heard.
You know, but the politics department of the BBC just seems to be overrun with Brexiteers who have their own agenda and have the perfect tool in order to push that. Question time.
So do you remember when the BBC had asked us to interview Tim Martin from Wetherspoons?
Well, asked you.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so they sent us to...
You met him, didn't you?
Yeah, they sent us to Sunderland when he started his tour of talks in his Wetherspoons pub, so a little bit of, bumping up the numbers there. And I went down and I couldn't believe the audience. Well, I suppose...
Wetherspoons with Tim Martin.
No, I know, possibly, maybe I've been naive, but it was definitely at the lower end of what I would have expected from his audience. It was pissed up people, mortal drunk with pints, stinking a drink, and just like shouting. And he was giving this talk in the middle of like a busy dining area, well, half busy. I'd say maybe there was about 30 people there for him, and there was this group of women clearly just trying to enjoy a meal in Wetherspoons. And he was just stood behind them giving this lecture, and the women were like eating the food and like looking up and like, for God's sake, like I'm just trying, they didn't want involved. So anyway, I had this meeting with them, and this is when I sort of became aware of a possible bias going on with the BBC. So I absolutely nailed him to the wall, chapter and verse. He couldn't get away with anything. He had no real arguments. I brought up obviously the problems with Nissan going on, and he had nothing to say. I think that the best thing he said was, "I'm a strong believer the better, the more democratic your country, the stronger the economy." Well, you might want to talk to China right now, because versus Greece, because I think there's a big difference. And I nailed this guy to the wall, and halfway through, this drunk came over with his pint, spitting, mortal drunk, and he was going, "You're a stooge," like what I assume he meant is like an actor. "You're a stooge. I voted Remain," massive lie. And if there was another vote now, everyone that voted Remain in my family, 9 people, this is in Sunderland, every man, woman and dog would vote Brexit now, and just was ranting on. The interviewer did nothing to really stop him. I said, "Listen, mate, you've clearly had a drink. We're trying to conduct an interview here." And he kept on shaking Tim's hand. Anyway, and I laughed and made a comment saying, "Oh, imagine if that was, the interview." Anyway, so quite excited, waiting for it to appear on the radio. Text my family, "Oh, I can't wait for this to come on." It came on. They cut out the entire interview apart from the first few words and played this guy, this pissed drunk coming into the interview, giving his opinion. And so obviously I'd travelled in, cleared the afternoon to have one sentence.
Yeah.
And then not hear any of the argument, but this like drunk just intervening. That was.
We need someone at the BBC to come back on this
Yeah.
and say that, no, Graham, no, Paul, you're wrong. We're not being told to do this. Are they doing it of their own free will? Because that almost makes it worse.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Are they being told to do this by the government?
Nailed to the wall on his quotes about Patrick Minford, who himself has said that agriculture and manufacturing is out the window.
Yeah.
How are you
Economists
going...
for Brexit.
Yeah, economists for Brexit or for free trade now, allegedly. What are you personally going to be prepared to do to make a means for when 7,000 people in Sunderland lose their jobs, or up to 34,000 people across the supply chain? What are you personally going to do in accountability?
He's calling himself the economist for free trade. We're throwing away our comprehensive free trade deals with 31 or 30, because we're one of them, with 30 other countries, right? Of the 34 other countries, apart from the UK, in the world that have advanced economies.
Yeah. It's nuts.
And we're going to replicate that with a bunch of developing nations because they've got a strong growth rate. I hear this like every single day when you listen to people who want us to leave the European Union. They say, "Oh, we're going to trade with the rest of the world," and they always come up with growth rate. And I am sick of hearing it, because you know what country's got really good growth rates? Bhutan.
Yeah.
Look it up on a map.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like when you first start a Facebook page.
11%, mate. 11% growth.
11% growth.
11%
Amazing.
growth.
One for every
Television
person in the
was
country.
banned until recently in Bhutan, and happiness is a commodity.
Happiness is a commodity.
And they only allow about 500 tourists in a year. 501 the year I went because I just bribed the border guard. Walked in. I went, look, the taxi's waiting there. Let me go in, get a photo, send it off to Guinness World Records, and then I'll come back. He said, all right then. Done. Jobs are good.
That's going to be our new immigration policy. Never mind.
Yeah, so this is the thing though. I mean, I'd love someone in the comments who works for the BBC or used to work for the BBC to have some response to this, because I'm really interested in the way that the BBC has pushed this in a way that I haven't really seen on Sky, I haven't really seen on ITV, and I haven't really seen on Channel 4.
Yeah, certainly on Channel 4. It's just, obviously, the country was divided straight down the middle initially. I 100% believe there's a swing now.
So is Parliament. So is Parliament a perfect reflection?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that I thought of yesterday. The people aren't, the politicians aren't carrying out the will of the people. So, well, they are. Even if half of them were back and remain, there would be. Yeah. It's not like we don't exist. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Just because they inched the win.
But the idea was we'll leave the EU with the best possible deal. But that's not what Theresa May put down when she said we're not going to be part of the customs union, we're not going to be part of the single market. Mm-hmm. We can't get a good deal. Any deal that we get with the EU is going to be shittier. Yeah. But one of the other big things that's just, making steam come out my ears is this isn't a deal. It's not a trade deal.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's a withdrawal agreement. Again, they're playing around with wording and slogans because what this is, please get it to the point of no return so I can make me trillions from betting against the markets and the economy. Please. I've got a lot of big, scary people and
disaster capitalism.
No doubt Russian mobsters backing us.
Indeed, which is quite terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, we know that the tabloids are biased. We know that the Express and the Mail and the Sun, scum, newspaper.
Really?
Yeah. They have their own agenda and they push it. I mean, the Telegraph is owned by the Barclay brothers. They own the Ritz. They're not speaking for the common man.
Working class heroes. Have you never been at the Ritz? Come on.
But this is the thing. They've got their own agenda. Fair enough, right? Well, it's not fair enough. But one of the things that was always a bit topsy-turvy in the UK is that in the UK, our tabloids just printed lies all the time, and just people just took it on board and thought that was
government policy now.
But the TV was like devilishly impartial. It was very strong on trying to present things, not a false equivalency. They didn't have a weatherman and then have someone saying, "No, I don't believe you because I threw some fortune cookies on the ground and I don't think it's going to rain." Do you know what I mean? It's like that was never an issue. But in the last sort of 20 years, we're seeing, especially with the global climate change argument, that it's not happening. So I'm in denial of reality. Get me on the TV.
Yeah.
Feeling that if you ever have someone who is going to talk about the science of climate change, you have to have someone who doesn't believe it's happening at all.
Yeah.
And now we're moving towards a situation where it's more like American TV. And in America, the newspapers like the Washington Post and the everything except the National Enquirer, the Washington Post and New York Times, are very good for being quite impartial. I know they hate Trump, but
One great thing I heard from a commentator was if you had an anti-rape activist on the TV, you wouldn't match it with a pro-rape. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like you feel like we're at this point, what I mean, where there's people out there going, the Earth is flat, and it's.
So in America we're kind of topsy-turvy because their TV is so biased. Like we've obviously seen Trump going on about CNN, but the reality is that Fox News is just the Trump broadcasting network. And
not recently, they have turned. They've turned against him. Yeah.
I saw a clip the other day, and they were pretty much Trump was right to pull the troops out of North Syria.
He's well, I think there's a lot of different. It's all personality politics over there. So it's like a lot of the different shows at different times have different viewpoints. Yeah. But it was 100% pro-Trump. But now they've started to like bash him a little bit.
Oh, good. Well, things might be turning, but the BBC has now turned into, as far as Brexit is concerned, a bit of a Fox News light. It's kind of pushing that, and especially that clip from Question Time last night is just. It's just gobsmacking. Who's in charge of that crowd?
Yeah.
Because when you apply to be on Question Time, and I've done it a few times, they actually ask you what you voted in the referendum.
Really? Oh, well, there we go. There we go. There's no one. I forget what it's called, but obviously when the producers and that are putting together, not the cast and call or whatever. So they will have to look at that data and judging by that show of hands yesterday, that's criminal really, considering how you have to. The influence. I think you've got a responsibility as a broadcaster, and if you've got any sort of influence, you've got a responsibility. Which is why like people like Nigel Farage and the Breaking Point poster.
But my partner Catherine, she we tried to get on Question Time in Liverpool earlier in the year, and she was actually asked on, right? So she was given an email, but they said she had to ring a number. Now Catherine's deaf, so she couldn't use the phone. So I wrote back to them saying yes, she wants to do it, and said oh no, she has to call. I'm like okay, well I'll meet up with Catherine because I wasn't with her at the time, and get her on the phone,
loudspeaker,
and put her on loudspeaker, and I will repeat what you're saying, and then she can read my lips, okay? But I didn't see her for a couple of hours, right? And then I met up with her, said, right, let's ring the BBC. So we called up the number they gave us, spoke to the producer, and they said, sorry, our quota of Remainers is taken up now, so we don't have a space for you.
I think let's put an experiment, let's lie. Let's get all of the EU people to put Brexit, and let's see how many get on.
Maybe some Brexiteers they voted Remain to get on the show, but it just seems a bit improbable for that many people.
We'll make it scientific, right? We'll get 50, maybe 100 to 50 Remainers. Half of them will say I'm a Brexiteer, half of them will say I'll remain, and let's see who gets on the show.
Yeah.
Controlled experiment.
Yeah. Well, let's see where Question Time's going next, and we'll try and set that up. If you could help us, that would be great.
I know the panel next week. It's going to be Dr. Evil, Goldfinger. It's really nice people.
Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's literally like it's turning into like a Disney.
Secretary of State for Farming, Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so yeah, we'll try and do that. But yeah, we need to wrap this up because you have work to do. This is your office. Get back to work.
Yeah.
And so thanks for joining us. And until next time, here's to the EU.